want me to record the directions for the language sampling. All righty, good enough. These directions, this PowerPoint is also in your content, so you can find this. And also there is a sheet under assignments that gives you the directions. But I just want to go over it with you. This is the directions for your language sample that you will turn in. Hold on, I hit the wrong button as usual. That you will turn in soon. Let me see. Hold on. Y'all probably know. I bet you, who is it? Who's my little girl? Who's mine? I bet you Ellen knows right off the bat, don't you, Ellen? Let's see here. Oh, gosh, I'm giving you to July 5th. That's just really, you don't need to July 5th to get this done. Don't you want to do it earlier? Okay. So what it is the language sample, but you haven't done any analysis. I say get it done earlier. If you put it in there earlier, I'm going to check it off so you can go on with your next step. So Ellen, I would suggest you just turn yours in so I can give you suggestions on improving it, because I did see some things that you need to redo. Okay? All right. So don't send me your things by email. The Dropbox is there. I want you to put it in the Dropbox. All right? So if you send me your language sample by email, if I get to the email, when I get to the email, I will say, please put in Dropbox. Okay, so now that the Dropbox is there, that's where I want you to put it. And with this part, this is not the analysis. This is just letting me see how you collect a language sample. Most people get an A on this part because I also give you feedback. I'll give you feedback about, you know, what you need to do to make it better, and then you have to turn it back in. And then when you turn it back in, I think then I graded that you did it. I just pretty much grade that you did it. The bulk of your grade will come from the analysis when you do the analysis. That's where your grade will come off of the language sample. The fact that you can videotape and that you can write things down on a form, I just don't, you know, that's great, but that's not what being a speech pathologist is. All right, so here are your directions. Okay, hold on, let me see. I would prefer that your child to be age 3 to 5. That is the preference. A 6-year-old, somebody said they have access to a 6-year-old. That is fine with me, except for 6-year-olds have really complicated speech, and your analysis may be a little harder than your classmates. 3-year-olds do pretty well. Younger than 3, sometimes their speech isn't complex enough. And so if it's not complex enough, I will ask you to redo it. And so that's why if you're not sure, you may want to turn in your sample early, because some 3-year-olds speak like 5-year-olds, and some 3-year-olds still speak like 2-year-olds. So just because they're 3 and they have a language that isn't quite 3 yet, then I can't. It's not going to help you on this project. So it needs to be in a conversational setting. Also, your preschool child must be typical developing. They cannot have any diagnosed impairments or disabilities like hearing impairment, autism, Down syndrome. It can't be any. It has to be just a typical developing child without any types of diagnosis. Even though a hearing impaired child can be typical developing, but the hearing aids, their speech is going to be just a little bit different, because even if it's corrected, there may be some differences. And I don't want to get into that type of analysis in this beginning class, you know. So that would be for a different type of class. So I really want you to stick with kids who have no comorbidities, nothing, no other types of diagnoses. Okay, so also if a child is speaking the dialect, then you're going to have to also do extra with figuring out what is dialect and not dialect. But I will tell you that when I see your analyses, and then I will direct you to a website so that you will know what is dialect and what is standard English, and what is indeed an error. So those are three different things. Having a dialect is not an error. It is not a speech delay. Having a dialect is not that. So let's suppose a child who speaks AAE and they say 2 cent. Okay, you cannot penalize the child for saying 2 cent as a speech pathologist. All right? Now for you that might be, well, he's not doing standard English, but we're not trying to decide if a child is doing standard English. What we're trying to decide is if a child has typical language for his culture. That's what you do. You're not an English teacher. Okay, so, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. You should pay attention. Look at this right here. Oh, let me get my arrow. Okay. You should pay attention to the context in which the sample is taken. You want your sample to be representative and natural. We talked about that last week. You want to use toys or just spontaneous conversation. It just depends on the age of your child and how talkative your child is. I suggest that you videotape because you have to get the context, but you can audio. You know, if you're there and you can either say child pointing to book, child, picking up block, mother reading book. You can say those kinds of things on the audio, but the video will be so much better for you when you go back. Okay, and then once you do this, you will get enough to get 120 utterances. Oh, you can just, I think last week I said, about 100 utterances. You're going to only turn in to me 50 utterances. Oh, yes, very good, Bradley. That is an excellent question. So these are the types of things that I will give you feedback on when you show me your transcript. Okay, if they say mama 5 times, then you'll have to skip that portion. You can do the mama once. And some people let you do twice, but for this class, I don't want a transcript where they're saying mama, mama, mama. Because it's not going to give you anything to analyze, and it will affect your grade. So if they say mama 5 times, I would not include that. It would just be really one utterance if there's a pause. So what is an utterance? And we're going to talk about that too. I don't know if it's on this PowerPoint, but an utterance is is when the child is making a statement about something, and then he pauses. That's the end of that utterance. So an utterance will be, and for a phrase, it could be a word, it could be a phrase, or it could be a sentence. You'll have to decide based on the context, but you cannot have 2 sentences together as one utterance when you number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You cannot have 2, you'll have to break it up. So if a child says mama, like that, then that's one utterance. If the child says mama, 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 then all of those mamas together would be one utterance. Oh yes, a 3-year-old knows hundreds of words. Oh yes, so if you have a 3-year-old that doesn't know 50 words, and that is not a 3-year-old you can use on this sample. 18 months. By the time they're 18 months, they would know about 50 words, understand 50 words. They might only say about 10, 20. When they're 2 1/2, they understand, over 100 words, 152. I mean, by 3, you're talking hundreds of words that they understand. What they produce, they can produce sentences, hundreds of words at 3 also. So a 3-year-old who isn't doing that, then that 3-year-old may be a late talker and maybe normal, but you can't use that child because we don't know if the child is delayed or just a late talker. So you can only use fluent talkers for this class, for the purposes of this class. So those are good questions. Any other good questions? Oh, 6 weeks. Oh, well, I'm not so sure she knows 5 words at 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Oh, so cute, Bradley. I want a 6-week old. Oh, my God, I miss those days. Okay, all right. Any other questions? If you're having trouble, classmates, maybe you might want to share your children. And I'm not sure how you can arrange it through Skype or through, how you can arrange that they get to see, but, maybe you can help other people out. I don't know. If not, then you'll have to get with me, and we'll have to talk about something, a YouTube video. Those are usually harder, but I have to okay it. Okay, so you will audio or video at least a 20-minute segment, and that's the minimum. It might take 30, it might take an hour. It just depends on your child. You need enough time and interaction to get 100 utterances or 75 utterances. I need 50 good ones. So the more you get, the better it will be for you, because if they're not good, I'm going to send you back. Okay. So if you're unsure about your transcript, it's probably better for you if you do it before July. All right. You're going to use the format given in the Rutherford text, Chapter 1. You don't have to buy the book. I've given you an example of the pages, and you can use that, or you can create your own page. Excuse me. And I've also made copies of the directions from Rutherford, so you can use that in terms of setting up your language sample. The Rutherford text is also used in graduate school, so if you bought it now, then you could use it in graduate school, but you have to know that you're going to get in. So that's why if you don't necessarily have to buy it, but it's a good reference book for doing language samples. All right. Also, these down here, this very last direction, this is what you're going to do next after your sample is approved. And I will write, once you put it in the Dropbox, I will write approved. All right. Once I write approved, then you're going to do what we call an analysis. Your analysis isn't due until July 19th. So after you turn in your language sample, you will only have 2 weeks to do your analysis. So and in your analysis, we're going to do something called the MLU, meaning length of utterance. We're going to look at Brown's 14 grammatical morphemes. And we're going to do a semantic analysis. Woo! I don't know if we're going to do all of this, because this is the summer, and you're undergrads. Some of you don't even know what I'm talking about. And you're going to do a syntactical analysis. Maybe. I will probably pick an easy semantic analysis for you to do. The syntactical analysis, we'll think about it. No. Sorry, buddy. No. I'm in class. You're going to have to sit. And guess what Buddy is doing? Buddy is sitting. Such a great dog. Such a great dog. All right. So are there any questions regarding the directions, the original directions of getting your language sample? That's 6 of speech chain. Oh, that's funny. All right. Anybody else? Anybody else with other questions or witty comments? Well, cats are supposed to be smarter than dogs, they say, but I think my buddy got any cat beat. Yes, you do, buddy. He's looking at it because I said his name. All right. So this is what the form looks like. Part of the form. So those of you who've already gone on content and looked at the forms And you can just type this up yourself. Name of child, of course, make up a name. Don't give me the real name or put his initials. You can just put BJ, or you can put Buddy. You can put your cat's name, I don't care. Put the chronological age of the child. Uh-oh, I may need to teach you how to do chronological age. Do you know how to do chronological age? All right, so yes or no? All right. Yes, in a while. All right, then. So we'll have to do that because you got to get that right as well. Okay, the type of situation, free play in the living room, the date, time of day. Your length of transcript will be 50, well, let me see, 50 utterances. Yeah, it will be 50. And then the how long it took. You're kidding me, Mary. There is a calculator? Whoa, that's great. But I'm going to still teach you to do it the old-fashioned way in case the calculator, I don't know, the electric power goes out. And you can't get to online. Oh my God, I had no idea. Yes, I'd like that link too. If I don't have to do it. Okay. And then the people who are present. And look, they use initials, M for mom, B for Bridget, that kind of thing. All right, so now, whenever you do a language sample, I do not want you to transcribe in the phonetic alphabet, because some of you have not done phonetics, so you don't even know what that is. So all we're going to do is we're going to do it orthographically. So here it says, transcribe all speech produced by the child and to the child in standard English orthography. Standard English orthography. So that just means the way you naturally write. You don't do it in phonetics. Now, sometimes if you've already taken phonetics, if a child is unintelligible, you might want to write phonetically what you hear, but you don't know what the child is saying. But that is not required. Okay. For adults, use standard English segmentation. Let's see, don't worry about that. Just use standard English. So, all right, so let me show you the example right here. So this is what it looks like. You have 3 columns. You have what the adult says, you have the context, and you have what the child says. All right, now notice the context. If it's the child doing something, it appears here, and then it appears on the same line of the child's production. So the child said, whoops, B trying to put lion on bar by tail. And the child says, whoops, so he must have dropped it or something. And you see they have that as his first utterance. So then if they skip a line, and they have a 1 here for the adult says, what happened to the lion? So here the adult didn't initiate. The adult waited for the child to initiate by saying, whoops, okay? And then the adult followed up by trying to engage the child by saying, what happened to the lion? And then the child responds, fall down. Now you see this little line here, that means the end of the utterance. So you need to put a slash. I don't want you to write all of the different devices that they say. I do want you to put the slash to denote that this is the end. And the only reason that I'm doing that is because if some of you get into graduate school, which I hope all of you get into graduate school, that instructor will want you to use the devices. And I am going to introduce you to some, but not all. And so therefore, when you get into graduate school, it won't be totally, new. You won't just have your eyes open big like, oh, what's she talking about? So, did he get hurt? is what the adult trying to keep the conversation going, and the child responds no. Now let's go back. How old is this child? Okay, so we're talking a very young child, so this child is only 2 years and 4 months. I think this is the same child. Let me see. Bridget, let's see if it says a B. Yeah, B. See, B for Bridget. Now the transcriber says B looks at mom. So this is mommy, the adult. B looks at M, mom. And then Bridget says yes for whatever reason. Did he get hurt? First Bridget said no, then Bridget changed her mind and said yes. So you get the gist of this, of what's going on. So now, here at number 6, you see Bridget said C, and you see that little arrow, it just means that she had intonation rising, and that was the end of her utterance. It means that there was a pause. That was the end of her utterance. So all of this fall down is a sentence utterance. This is a single word utterance. Here is a phrase utterance. Well, I guess that would be phrase utterance. You know, so these are all utterances, even though, you know, you may think of an utterance as a one word, but it's not. It could be a phoneme, it could be a word, syllable, or a sentence. Okay. And down here, they're not going to count it because you don't see a number there. Here she said something that was unintelligible. So here are some rules. What was rule number 1? Hold on. Oh, it was just that. Transcribe everything orthographically. Not 3. Oh, it counts as one utterance. Well, we're not talking about morphemes or words. We're talking about an utterance because the utterance is a sentence. If I say go to the store, that's an utterance. I uttered a sentence. So that would be utterance number 5. So you don't say hurt is an utterance, his is an utterance, tail is an utterance, there is an utterance. That's utterance number 5. So they're counting all the utterances. Now, will they analyze all of these utterances? No. They will start somewhere in the middle to analyze the utterances. Okay? Yes. Yes. An utterance is just defined how, for a language sample, an utterance is a thought. And a thought could be a sentence. It could be a word. Okay. Number 2, capitalize proper names within the utterance. Do not capitalize the initial letter of a child's utterance. So you see here, this is not capitalized. Okay, let's go back. You see, not capitalized, not capitalized. So you don't want to capitalize what the child says, the initial sound. And then you are capitalizing the adults, because adults are usually speaking, in what we call a sentence. Number 3, place an action or event that occurs simultaneously with an adult on the same line. So you see Jay banging cars together, and you put the word boom. The parent says a new car, and you're going to put the context right beside it if it's happening simultaneously. If it's not happening simultaneously, so right here you see Jay is eating a cracker, but Jay didn't say anything. It's some quiet, some silence. After Jay finishes eating the cracker, then Jay says all gone. So now you're going to say all gone. If Jay say eating cracker, then you would put eating cracker right here as Jay is eating the cracker. But now Jay eats cracker, you say all gone, and that lets you know that's appropriate because all gone suggests that there was some space and they ate it up. Oh, that's good, Colleen. All gone, and for little kids who are 2.5, based on those sentences, if they say this is all gone as a child, they learn it as one word, like they'll learn it as finished or done. So all gone is counted as one word. So it is based on how children learn language. But if you have an older child and it's, you know, if they say all gone, everything is, well, they wouldn't say that. So, so for younger children, yes, one word. More cracker. So this would be two. This is one utterance, but two morphemes. Well, actually two morphemes in that one utterance. So, and then Jay reaches for a bag to get more cracker. So he asked first, more cracker, but his voice didn't go up. That lets me know that he's not using his intonational patterns for questioning all the time. That this child isn't using questions all the time. And then Jay reaches for bag. So where you put the context depends on the timing. So please recognize that. Right here, this voice intonational patterns going up. See? And we'll get to that, Bradley. I think I have the rules. When an utterance, oh, I did that one. So here you are, punctuation conventions. 5, you should use different verb tenses when you describe the context. Like here, you see eats, that means it's happening right then. Reaches is happening right then currently. So you want to use the verb tense based on the context. Now, punctuation. Use a slash to determine that this is the end. To punctuate a boundary, an utterance boundary. Pauses greater than 2 seconds, then that's where there's slash. So you listen for a pause, and then you want to put the slash there. And also you can use your judgment as to whether or not they ended that thought. Because sometimes kids just run sentences together, 4-year-olds especially. I went to the store, and I went here, and I bought this, and I did blah, 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 and I did blah, 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 and I did blah, blah, blah. Well, you cannot put all of that as one utterance, because they're doing lots of different thoughts. So I make the students break it up to where you think it's the natural pausing should occur. Now, we're doing normal children. When you're a speech pathologist, you're doing children who have language delays. And guess what? They're not going to have utterances that long. So if you can analyze the speech of a normal child, analyzing the speech of a delayed child is nothing, because their utterances are going to be really short. They're going to be speaking like a much younger child. So this is really the perfect way to learn it. Okay. Oh, hold on. Okay, when emphasis or exclamation is apparent, you see what you're using an exclamation mark. Oh, indicate adult questions. If it's a WH question, use a question mark. You see right here? Use a question mark. If it isn't a WH question, you know, it's, what you call it, like interrogative reversal. Well, yeah, or you know, how your voice goes up. Where? See? Well, that was a WH question, but see? Then you use this little rising arrow, suggesting that the intonation goes up. So here are the punctuations that I want you to use, and notice each one has that little slash suggesting the end of that utterance. I hope my speech gets better. I just must really be tired. Use a dot to indicate a pause of less than 2 seconds within an utterance. And don't worry about that. That's just too much for me, too subjective. You know, don't worry about this. Worry about number 9 in graduate school if she makes you do it. But I'm just not going to check into that. Indicate a long pause. Okay, so here, this is easy. Okay, the child, Jay's trying to get the wheel on, and then he says, wheel go there. So now he isn't saying something for a little while. So you might want to put some little dots there to just kind of let you know that there was a big pause in between this utterance and his next utterance. Okay. So Jay playing with blocks. Oh, this right here, you indicate a long pause if you have different situations. So you got to pause. You see it's going vertical because first he's playing with blocks and then he's running to the bathroom. Okay, this one is horizontal because it's a long pause between the phrase. The situation is the same, trying to get the wheel on, and he says wheel go there, and he's still trying to struggle, you know, they may not talk, and then he still may talk about the wheel. But that way I know that it's the same context. It lets me know that the context stays the same for those utterances. So this one lets me know that there has been a big pause and there's been a different context. You know, why that's important, I don't know. Because to me, if I see this context, then I know, well, I guess I wouldn't know that there's been a lot of quiet time, and maybe that's important to know. I've never really had that to happen much. Okay, use a colon to indicate that an utterance, a word is drawn out. Don't worry about that one. Don't worry about 11, the colon. And I'll go back through. Don't worry about number 12, the curving arrow. Let's see, do I want you to do that? No, don't worry about stress marks. That's too much. That's too much for what for this class. I think I'm done. Let's see, anything else I want you to do? Do I want you to do self-correct? I like self-correct. So let's do self-correct if they make a mistake about a word, more cookie, self-correct, cracker. That'll also let me know that that is the same utterance. More cookie, self-correct, cracker. Because otherwise I see more cookie, cracker. I'll say, is this one utterance or two? Is more cookie and then cracker should be a separate utterance? That's what I'll be wondering. But if I see self-correct, I'll understand. If their speech is unintelligible, put the X's, so you need to do that. All righty. Don't worry about these utterances down here. You can learn those in graduate school, these abbreviations. So let me tell you what I want you to do. All right, let's go back again. For the punctuations, I want you to do exclamation, WH questions, and rising intonation. I don't care about that one. I don't really care about 10 or 11 either. But you can do this. If you like the practice of doing it, that is fine. And I want you to do I want you to do self-correction. That's it. Oh, and if something is unintelligible, the X's, 3 X's, and a slash. If you know how to transcribe, go ahead and do transcription of what you think it is. But if you don't know how to do phonetics, don't worry about it. Okay, do I need to repeat that? I'll repeat it one more time. Do exclamation, WH questions, rising intonations, punctuation. I want you to do self-correction and unintelligible. So that's really only 5 things, I believe. So I think that's pretty easy. If you've already done the punctuations, I say more power to you and keep it as it is. You've already done that. I think that's great. You can do these if you want, like if the child laughs, you can put LF. If the child cries while you're working with the child or starts to whisper, put WH. So you can do these kinds of things as well. Just to let the person reading it, myself, know. Any questions? So that's your form. So your form in the end will look like this. Oops, right here, except for you will have 50 utterances on this side. Okay, you'll have 50. And the adult, I don't know. I don't have a limit for the adult. That'll be whatever it takes for the adult to get the child to interact. I will be looking on this side to see how many you have. And please number it, as you see here, to make it easy on your teacher. And some people have put this in an Excel sheet and then transformed it, or transfer it, copy it to Word. Other people have made tables in Word, a 3-column table in Word, and typed it in. Other people have taken the copies that I have given in content, and they have handwritten it in. And if you handwrite it, you must do it neatly, or I will ask you to redo it, because I can't struggle with reading handwriting, because I won't know how to grade you. All right. All righty, questions. Are you ready? Are you excited? Well, are you ready? Even if you're not excited, are you ready? Okay, all right. Okay, let's see. Where am I? Oh, that's the other lecture. We did all of this last week because I'm moving forward now. All right, we stopped right here, I believe, with this beautiful picture of the brain. Okay. I'm going to pinpoint some parts of the brain. This part right here is called the primary motor cortex, the red strip. This part of the brain is the reason that you are able to walk, to talk, to do a lot of things. Because this controls your hand movement, lip movements, and things like that. Oh, Susan, I really don't know. You'll have to, it's the next PowerPoint up. It's called Theories, I think. Theories of Language Development. I don't have a number. I don't have my slides aren't numbered, so I can't tell you that. That's the reason. So it's whatever the next, language theories. Oh, all you have, do you like PDFs? How come it says that on your screen? I don't see it on mine. Gosh, how do you get numbers? Oh, I see it now. Oh, I have to look over here. Oh, it's slide numbers 26. Thank you, Mary. Oh, let me see if they're all numbered. Oh, there's a 28, 29. I have never, ever paid. Now, some of them don't have numbers. How do some of them have numbers and some don't? Okay, all right. So let me go back on. So this red strip here would be your primary motor cortex, and it controls your movement, your lip movement, your movement of your hands. In this cortex, there are specific regions that are dedicated to the mouth. So when a surgeon goes in and has to do brain surgery, they want to keep you awake. And then as they're touching certain areas, they keep asking you questions to see because they don't want to touch your speech zone. So if they touch a certain part of this brain up in here, then you won't be able to talk. And that's why they have people awake during brain surgery, because they want to make sure. If they touch a certain area of the motor cortex, it'll make your fingers move. So, it's very interesting. So this is your motor cortex for speaking. The motor cortex is located in what we call the frontal lobe. So all of this is the frontal lobe. This part of the brain here is called the temporal lobe. Okay. Now, if you see here in this light blue area, this is the auditory cortex. Now, you see the word auditory. What does that say to you? Hearing. Right. So what you hear, remember, as the listener, the person speaks, then you hear it. And as you hear it, the brain has to decode it. And the decoding comes from the ear, from the auditory nerve that communicates with the brain. And that nerve in the ear that communicates with the brain will go to this part of the brain called the auditory cortex. So this part of the brain deciphers what it is that you hear. It interprets what you hear. So it interprets what you hear, here and here, all of this little area here. And it says, I hear, that's right, Bradley, this is processing. I hear the word dog. So, and so you will hear the word dog and you'll understand the word dog. This is part of the brain that operates that. All of these parts right here have some responsibility in understanding of speech. Speech processing, or auditory comprehension is another word. So once you hear the word and then you say, well, I want to say the word dog, well, the information that is in your that is being comprehended, that information, if you're to repeat it, then goes through this bundle of nerves right here, goes through this, and they're called the arcuate fasciculus. So a fasciculus means just a bundle of nerves. So this is the arcuate fasciculus. It goes over here to this area of the brain in the frontal lobe. These two are connected, the motor cortex and Broca's area, and it will tell your lips and tongue and velum and vocal cords to produce the word dog, to move so that the word dog can be produced. So the temporal lobe is comprehension. The frontal lobe is speech production. Temporal lobe is comprehension. Frontal lobe is speech production. And these are parts of the frontal lobe that are responsible for speech production. And these are parts of the frontal lobe that would be responsible for speech processing. And the arcuate fasciculus bridges that gap. It will send information from the temporal lobe to the frontal lobe so that you can produce what you have thought. There you go. So that's just a quick summary of the brain. Now within that brain, that they say is found in Broca's area, right here, for speech production, is something called mirror neurons. So when we what they think about mirror neurons is this: it helps to assist with imitation, because it's like looking in a mirror. You're looking at somebody do something and then you try to imitate it. So it is that part of the brain is activated, even if you're trying to learn how to do a dance, because you're looking at it because it's motor movement, you're looking at the person dance, you're trying to make those same moves. And mirror neurons even go as far as, like, if you see somebody playing on the football field and then they get tackled and you go, ooh, it's just like you can feel you jump back even though no one has tackled you. So it helps you to appreciate what's going on with others. It's the ability to recognize actions. and it also helps us to communicate. Now, this is a controversial theory, but it's a very interesting theory, and it is in your textbook, so I have to bring it up. So, mirror neurons, observation of an action automatically triggers simulation of that action. So they think that's how babies learn. They learn smiling, they learn a lot of different things from the adults. Now there is a what you call it, a reflex that makes a baby smile. That's usually called gas. But when the baby gets control of their reflexes and they're able to restrain reflexes and actually do things automatically on their own, the way that they learn is through looking at the facial expressions of the people who are taking care of them. And then they begin to imitate those kinds of behaviors. So neurons in the premotor cortex fire during goal-directed actions as well as the observations of similar actions. So goal-directed actions would be speaking. With speaking, you have a goal, right? Your goal is to say a certain word. So these neurons in this part of the brain, hold on, let me go back there. This is the motor, so the premotor is up in here. And this part of the brain will begin to become activated. That's what fire means, to activate. Because your brain has electrical energy, so that's why they use the word fire. Also, mirror neurons, they believe, provide a neural basis for empathy, imitation and empathy. And that's whenever you see somebody get hit, because motorically you see an action happening, and then you react to it yourself, and that is the empathy part. The whole thing, everything about us even having, people having mirror neurons, the entire theory. So here is your premotor cortex. And right there was your motor cortex. Well, there it is. Motor cortex, premotor cortex. So here is your the planning part of your brain, the frontal lobe. When people have brain injuries, TBI, traumatic brain injury, from the brain being, the head being hit through contact, either through sports contact or through an accident, your head goes forward. So that when your head goes forward, your brain goes backwards. When your head goes backwards, your brain goes forward. It hits the back part and front part of the skull. Well, this part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, is the part that's injured. And this part of the brain is important for planning, movement. And sometimes people, when they have these injuries, they may develop issues. They may develop clumsiness. They develop some speech problems. Some people may begin to stutter. There are some different movement kinds of issues that can happen. So the prefrontal cortex sends information to the premotor cortex, and the premotor cortex sends information to the motor cortex about movement. And speech is movement. So you need to know these parts of the brain, the premotor cortex and the motor cortex. I also want you to know the words, where is it? Broca's area, Wernicke's area, and auditory cortex. So you should know and arcuate fasciculus. Oh, yes. Primary motor cortex, Broca's, primary auditory cortex, Wernicke's area, and arcuate fasciculus. If you would know this picture, know that this is the frontal lobe, even though it's not marked, and this is the temporal lobe. The frontal lobe has to do with production, speech production. The temporal lobe has to do with speech understanding, auditory comprehension. All right. So the mirror neuron, so their thing is whenever an animal, whether it's a monkey or a person, if we do something ourselves, certain parts of the brain light up. And when we see somebody else do the very same thing, those same parts of the brain light up, even though we're not doing anything. So the movement part of the brain lights up, even if you're not moving. The movement part of the brain lights up if you see someone else moving, but you're not moving. So they find that to be very interesting, and that's why they call them mirror neurons. So you see this face-to-face contact with the baby. The idea is that these babies have mirror neurons. So they're watching what you do, and those neurons light up in the baby's brain, causing, interaction, stimulation in the brain, creating the baby's response as well, and teaching the baby how to respond in the environment that they're in. And that is because the brain is a self-organizing neural network. The brain is made up of billions of neurons, and the neurons are the aspects of the brain that make it so that we are who we are. The neurons uses electrical energy and chemical energy to make the brain active. So when a person has a stroke, certain neurons are then damaged, and then that part of your body doesn't work anymore. That ability to think doesn't work anymore because those neurons have been damaged. But let me tell you, the good news is this. The good news is that the brain is self-organizing. It is plastic. It has plasticity. And let me tell you what's even better news is that even old people have plasticity. At one time, neuroscientists thought that only young people had self-organizing neural networks, that once you get to a certain age, that's it for you. That's it. But they have discovered that, people can recharge their brains. Now, you'll never be at the ultimate optimal peak that you may have been when you were young, but you don't have to say, well, this is it. I cannot learn anything new. I cannot, learn another language. It may take you longer. It may be a little slower, but you can do it. And that is so encouraging to me. Oh, yes, Susan, it is exciting. There's so many doors opening for us. So this plasticity, this idea about plasticity has opened up the doors for all these games, brain games, having older adults do puzzles, and a lot of different things. Now, the evidence on the brain games is pretty, not that great. But the idea for me is that I can do something about delaying the onset of disease, of dementia, of a brain malfunctioning if I do certain things. Because my brain, I can activate neurons that have been more dormant, and therefore I have a little more plasticity to deal with, a resilience to deal with when damage occurs. And so I like that idea. And so anyway, but babies, they just come with all of this. Brad, your baby just has all these networks going on, and they're trying to make connections. I'm going to skip something here. Hold on, because I just want to show you, because all this other stuff is going to be boring that I talk about. More boring than what I'm just now saying about the brain. Some of you might not like neurology, but I love neurology. Oh, it's at the end. Okay, come on, come on. Oh, there it is. Okay, those of you who have babies, oh, this is not the right one, but it's one anyway. You see right here? These are neurons. All those little circle things, those are neurons. That's a neuron, neuron. Those are the bodies of the neurons. All those little teeny branches, those are called dendrites. These long branches here, that's an axon. These axons are the ones that send these electrical currents to other neurons. So you see this axon, do you see how these neurons are trying to connect together? Now this is a brain that has not been stimulated very well. So this might be the baby as the baby just comes out. But as Brad is talking to his baby and playing with his baby, look what happens. Look at that network. Oh my gosh, this is a complicated network of neurons communicating with each other, buzzing, let's get this. And the baby says, oh gosh, I need to think of this word. Guess what? There are all kinds of shortcuts, and children can come up with the words like that. And old people like myself, we're like, okay, I got to go the long way around. I got to go the long way around because I don't have enough networks. So I get the word, but it takes me longer because I don't have a shortcut. So now, guess what Dr. Gibson's doing? I do more reading probably than most people my age, but now I'm doing complex kinds of problem solving. I'm trying to tap into areas of my brain. I'm trying to get my brain to look more like this over here. Because look, if I get some damage, I'm damaging this over here. Well now, gosh, I got all these gaps. But if I got some damage over here, this little neuron says, don't worry, Terry. I'll take up the slack for you, and I'm going to run a different path. So that is the premise behind neuroplasticity, and you want to think about it with your babies. And I tell my children, not my children, I'm sorry, I call you my children. I tell my students, I tell them this. Listen, you can raise your children the way you want to, but I'm going to tell you the way that I think is the best for language, and that is you don't let your children cry all the time. That's stressful. And you know, it brings up toxins within their brain, chemicals, toxic chemicals, the electrical energy overfires because they're anxious. You want to set up a situation where it's very conducive to them learning. And if you have items that you don't want them to break, then I'm going to say to you, for your child's brain's sake, you put those items away and you let them touch things. You put away things. You don't put things down that are dangerous and then slap the child's hand to say don't touch. What you do is you put it away and let the child touch and free to explore his environment. That is your duty as a parent, to allow your child to develop a complicated network, a complex network of synaptic connections. So there you go. You don't have to do as I say, of course. But if I get one of you to do as to follow my example, then I will feel very good about it. And I have had some coworkers say, Terry, I think I'm going to do what you did for your children. I said, oh, good, so good. Babies cannot, little babies are not spoiled. And if you want to call them spoiled, then they should be spoiled. So you spoil them. You spoil that baby, Bradley K. You spoil that baby. Okay. All right. There you go. All right. I'm getting off. So therefore, we will not be able to finish this class. So you won't have a lot of things on your test because I will get into these conversations. All right. So how is it that the baby, we can mix environment and biology together? The baby comes in with this wonderful biology because as people, we have great DNAs, you know? You know, the mother brings their DNA and the father will bring his DNA, and there's just a wonderful DNA. Now, you have to have an environment where the child needs to interact so you can get that brain stimulated. So environment and biology work together to assist in language growth. And let me tell you, even if the environment isn't what society says is the best, the child will still learn language. I mean, it takes like throwing a child in a closet, never speaking to the child ever, constantly having the child crying, hungry. It takes tremendous abuse, or living in an orphanage where they pay no attention to you and abuse you, you know, in all kinds of ways for the child not to learn language. All right? So you don't have to do a lot for the child to pick up language. But the more you do, the better it can be, as long, you know, as it's quality kinds of input. Children learn language gradually, and language is affected by meaningful interactions. And meaningful can be positive or negative. There are too many negative interactions in some cultures for children. You know, there's always screaming and, you know, no, sit down, be quiet. I mean, what connections are you making in that child's brain? You know? So the good thing about it is, because the child's brain is plastic, so those connections that were made early on can be modified later. So that's the good news. But why? If you have a newborn, why even make it so that we have to make these modifications later? Let's just start with them fresh and make them great thinkers early on. The one thing we have learned about language development is that language development is predictable, and that's very good. But at the same time, it's still varied. It's varied but predictable. So let's take the age that children say their first words. On average, it is 12 months. But you can have a child say their first words as early as 11 months or as late as 14 months and still be normal. And let me tell you, my oldest child is brilliant, but she was a late talker. She didn't say her first words until she was 14 months. And then at age 2, she was doing these little simple 2-word utterances, just simple speech. I was just like, what's going on? I gave her this wonderful environment. And at 2.5, you know, she was finally getting into 3-word utterances. I compared that with my niece, whose mother was not a speech pathologist. And my niece said her first words, I think, at 10 months, 11 months. By the time she was 1, she was using 2 words. By the time she was 15 months, she was speaking in sentences. I was like, what's going on here? Is my child slow? But by the time my child reached 3.5, she was speaking just the same as my niece, who was talking much earlier. So there you go. So it's variable. So don't get all antsy, too, if you're saying, oh, my God, my child is 12 months and they still haven't said a word, or 13 months, still hasn't said a word, as long as they're understanding directions. Okay. Yes, gender does make a difference. According to the literature, girls do speak earlier than boys and also speak more. Yes. But the boys catch up. So in the end, it becomes gender neutral. So here are some linguistic universals. Excuse me. Okay, and they use cross-linguistic studies, looking at different languages from around the world, and they found that there are some common features, no matter if you speak Chinese or English or French or whatever. it seems like there are some common features. And one universal they found, they thought, that's what they thought, was that word order represents early grammar. So that children will say, eat cookie, but they don't say cookie eat. You know, very young, they'll say eat cookie, but they don't say, they seem to understand that a cookie doesn't eat. Do you know what I'm saying? So word order seemed to be early, and they found this to be all over. However, as always, when somebody comes up with an idea, and this is a good thing, not a bad thing, they come up with an idea, and then all these other people behind them they'll come up and kick it around and say, oh, this is good, but this isn't good. This is good, but this isn't good. And that's good because it makes the theory better. So Bates and Marchman, they said, no, we don't really think there are universal characteristics. But they were looking at something different. They were looking at morphological structures. Uh-oh, I think I put the wrong one in. Well, anyway, that's okay. Because I don't think you know what morphology is, but that's okay. We'll talk about that later. What these researchers found, Bates and Marchman, they found that while first words of children who speak English lack inflections. Okay, let me make this real. What's an inflection? What's an inflection? Does anybody know? In English. No. Okay. An inflection is in English, what they're talking about, linguists are talking about. They're talking about like suffixes. Like when a child says, you know, cookie, and they want more than one cookie, they won't say cookies. They'll just say cookie, you know, but they might want more than one. So the early speech lack plurals. They won't say the S, or they won't say ing at the end. Possession, you know, apostrophe S. They don't say those are the inflections. However, Turkish children, they do use inflections. So now we do. That's not a universal. That's a difference in different countries, different languages. So they concluded that children learn grammar not based on a universal, but based on their own native language. So there was not they didn't feel that there was a universal as it related to grammar. So for example, word order in English is dominant. So for English speakers, word order is important because it doesn't make sense to say cookie eat, but it makes sense to say eat cookie. But in Turkish or other countries, it doesn't make word order isn't necessarily the dominant thing. Yes, word endings, yes. Yes, that's right. Okay, here was another universal. Children omit verbs from their first multi-word combinations. So children might say, Mommy, sock. Instead of saying, Mommy, put on my sock, they'll just say nouns. So they found that universal was not true. They found that some languages have verb omissions. Therefore, this universal was not supported. Now, in English, you will see some children omitting verbs in their first words, but that is because in English, verbs are more complex than nouns. And children go for what's the simplest. But that is not true for all languages. So here again, another universal. Hold on. Another universal that was not proven. Each language had a bias toward which aspect of language was most specific. The native language is the most powerful influence on how children develop language. So the grammar, the syntax, the vocabulary all depend upon the native language of the child, not linguistic universals. Vocabulary development is a strong predictor of grammatical development. So big vocabulary will predict that a child will also have grammar, the grammar as it relates to their culture. Hold on for 1 second. I'm back. Let me finish this grammar and vocabulary, and then I want to know what Bradley is sharing with us. So again, vocabulary and grammar, they did not find universals there either. They also found that the development of vocabulary and grammar is dependent upon the culture as well. And they gave some examples of English children and Italian children. Another example was this culture that was pretty isolated, cultural people who were pretty isolated. And as you can see, they had their own ways of communicating. And there were even different numbers of consonants from women versus men. I thought that was interesting. And they didn't describe anything by color or numbers, but yet they were able to communicate with each other. And they did stick drawings. So this is a very interesting thing. They talk about that in your textbook, this Parana culture. All right, Bradley, what is this video that the link that you're sharing with the class? Oh, differences in tonal languages. Oh, yes. Yeah. That's very interesting. When people who speak a tonal language and they learn to speak English, I have a very hard time understanding the English because their rhythm, the prosody is so different than English. How it impacts. Oh, I'm going to listen to that. I'm going to go copy that one. So what is the major impact of this, these people disproving or at least rejecting the idea that there are universals? The initial thought of linguistic universals did not consider the environment that the child is raised in. So when these people did this research, these linguists, all they did was to say, gosh, all of these children, they probably looked at the same language, and they found that all of these English children did things the same way, but they made it a universal, and they did not consider the context of other countries, or they were very specific and only looked at certain things and didn't look at the entire aspect of language, all the aspects of language. So the idea that there are linguistic universals were disputed, but we'll come back later to find that somebody will reintroduce that idea. So there are different types of theories about how children learn language. One of the theories is called the behaviorist theory. The behaviorists, the group of psychologists, that camp of people believe that language is learned. So any behavior that is learned follows certain principles. Behaviorists believe that the only behaviors that you can document and that are measurable are ones that you can observe. You can't know what goes into the mind of a child. So you can think you can try to interpret it, but you can't really measure it. You can only measure what it is that they say or what the output is. So behaviorists believe that language is something humans do, not something that they have inside. It's something that you do. And language can be trained. And the way you train language is you use imitation and reinforcement. Oh, no, this is the right one. So before I go more into language and how the behaviorists use training of language, I mean how they decide that children develop language, I'm going to talk to you about the different components of language, because it's really hard to talk about language development in using the terms that they use if you don't know what the terms are. So some of you may know, just bear with me. So I put this sheet in here. You don't have this because I just put these, I think it's 3 slides in here, and it would have the components of language. And I will put them in content. But language is divided into 3 components: form, content, and function or use. Form, content, and use. People like to use the word use. So the form is, it's phonology, so you can hear the letters, that you're saying. Phonology, that's the sound system. Morphology would be your prefixes and suffixes, right? Like possession, plurals. Syntax is how you put all of these words together to form a sentence, okay? So all of those make up the form of language. And then you have the content of language. That would be semantics. That means meaning. So content is, what does the language mean? Once you put these words and sounds together, what does it mean? And that would be vocabulary. So and understanding the message. So pragmatics is use of the language. So I ask the question, is it an appropriate question for the context? So with pragmatics, you are using form and content within the umbrella of using language to communicate. So pragmatics is like all-encompassing. How you use the language, how you request. If pragmatics would be, I want to request an action. That's the pragmatics of what it is you're trying to say. The form will be the actual sentence. The content is the meaning of what you're saying. So form, content, and use. Those are the different components. You have 5 of them: phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. You don't have to learn them in any order, but you need to know what's form, what is content, and what is what is function or use. And you can use, let's see, PMSS. I'm trying to think of a way you can remember this. I don't know. PPSSM. PMS. Okay, it's so cute. But there are 2 P's, so PPMMS, yeah. Peter Parker, Mary, Susan Sarandon. There you go. All right, so now we can go back to the behaviorists. So I may start talking about semantics and phonology, and all of you will be looking at me like I'm crazy. So behaviorists, remember, are the psychologists, and they say children learn language through imitation. And through imitation, the parents reinforce it. So imitation and reinforcement. They believe that children are not initiators. They're not initiators. They're not like trying to learn language. It just happens because the environment offers the opportunity of self-discovery. So as they're discovering what's happening in their environment, they learn language. Okay? It's kind of like as you're doing an experiment on something, you learn about physics, or you learn about chemistry. So as they're learning about their environment and self-discovery, they're also picking up these words and they're learning language through imitating what they hear in the environment. Okay? So, thus the behaviorists. Can anyone tell me, what do you think might be wrong with that theory? Can you think of one thing that might be a weakness? It's not wrong. I mean, it just may be not thorough, may not encompass everything. So children are not initiators of language learning. It just takes shape because they are discovering their environments, and they're imitating their parents. And then when they imitate what the parent says, the parent reinforces it by giving them what they want or by responding. That's a reinforcement. Do you see anything that might make this a weak theory? They're a good one, but a weak one. Oh, nobody's gonna give it a go? Oh my gosh. Oh. No one? I don't see anybody writing. Hold on. Oh no, somebody is writing. Ellen. Thank you, Ellen. Somebody. Oh, maybe she's not writing to me. Mary, Sarah, Susan. Oh, hi, Callie. Callie, I need to mark you that you're here. Okay. Let's see what happens. Let me see what she's saying. Let's see. Hard to measure. Okay. Uh-oh. All right. Okay, y'all are trying to get too deep. No, well, these are good ideas, yes. But you're getting too deep. Just think on the surface. All right. Let's think about imitation in the environment. There are children, okay, the child says, eat it. I eated that. Where did you get the word eated? Have you heard children now, they'll say some weird stuff. Where did you get that word? Did he imitate? So, and many times children come up with complex words that you're like, I don't know where you got it from. So many times the imitation isn't happening in the home like you think. So that's one of the weaknesses. Every form that the child learns is not imitated. So behaviorists also believe that there are differences among languages. That languages are different, and it's the environment that shapes the child's behavior, not something inside the child, not the internal, not the brain itself. The brain is active because the brain is exploring, but there's not something in the brain that makes the child learn language. The nativists, native, innate, these people believe just the opposite. All right, and they also believe that there are universals in the language. Yes, there are some universals that people have proven not to be true, but then they're saying there are other universals that are true. So you have now the nativists and the behaviorists who will go against each other in trying to understand how this child who comes out knowing nothing about the world in a matter of a year begins to understand his environment more and more and begins to speak in such a short period of time. And then by the time they're 3, they have a lot of adult-like speech characteristics. How does that happen? That is the question that the behaviorists and the nativists have come up with. That's what they're trying to answer. One of the ways that the behaviorists said that children learn language not because of something inside, but because of their environment, is through operant conditioning. Operant conditioning was named or coined by B.F. Skinner. Colleen, we'll get to that in a minute. B.F. Skinner. B.F. Skinner is a behaviorist because he believes all behavior is learned and that behavior is changed by events that follow or are contingent upon that behavior. So you change your behavior by what happens. So if you touch a hot stove and you burn your finger, you're not going to touch that again, so you're going to change your behavior. If you do something that causes great pleasure, then you're going to keep doing that behavior. So behavior is changed by the events that follow or are contingent upon that behavior. And preceding events, things that happen before, also influences behavior. Now, here are some words you need to know. Operant. Operant will be the behavior that can be affected. So operant conditioning. So you're conditioning someone to behave in a certain way, to do a certain operant. A reinforcer. A reinforcer is anything that increases the probability that the operant will occur, that the behavior that you want will occur. Punisher. That is an event that decreases the probability that a behavior will occur. So some people, for bad behavior, some people use punishment, right? Because you're trying to decrease the probability that that bad behavior occurs. And for good behaviors, we try to use reinforcement. All right, so learning, when a child learns, this is under the definition of operant conditioning, learning is a change in behavior. So if your behavior does not change, then you have not learned. Okay? So a behavior change is learning. Now, behavior doesn't have to mean like acting out. Behavior, you're doing a certain behavior in this class. So if you pick up new information from this class, that is a behavioral change, and you have learned. If after taking this class, your behavior is the same as it was before, then you have not learned in this class. So learning is a behavior change, a change in your behavior. Reinforcement and punishment are okay, well, we went over that. Okay. Some other words, other definitions, discriminative stimulus. This is a stimulus in the presence of which a particular response will be reinforced. The one thing that that can clear this up is this. All right, when your mother walks into the room and you've done something you know that maybe you shouldn't have done, and she gives you that look, then you know that you should not do, you're not going to do a certain thing. So here, just the look, that's a discriminative stimulus. The look is a discriminative stimulus. The child knows, is discriminating, he knows that, oh, I can't do that. That's right. If you say a certain word, then the child knows, okay, I'm not going to go across the street. Just walking in the front yard, the child will know that I have certain boundaries. So the discriminative stimulus becomes, you know, the mom standing there, or whatever is a signal to the child that a certain behavior must occur. So it is the probability that a particular response will happen because of that stimulus. The delta stimulus is a decrease in the probability that an action will occur. Aversive stimulus is an unpleasant consequence happens whenever a behavior occurs. So that's aversive. Now, in order for any kind of learning to happen, then the stimuli must occur frequently and consistently for learning to happen. And you know that intuitively. You just don't know these words. So you just memorize the words. Oh, delta, yeah, delta stimulus. Okay, let's take something positive. I'll take the example they gave in the book, the skateboarding. There's a little boy, he likes to skateboard, but he only likes to skateboard if he has a crowd, and because he likes to get cheers. But he won't skateboard unless there is a crowd. So the cheering of the audience is the delta. Reinforcement will not follow a certain response, so the child stops. So the lack of the audience is the delta stimulus, and the child won't do what it is that he won't do a certain behavior. So if the reinforcement isn't there, I'm sorry. Oh gosh, I'm not saying this right. Okay, here's a good one. Okay, we use a delta stimulus whenever we tell a child does a bad behavior, right? And we ignore them. Because what the child is looking for is attention. So the child recognizes that the reinforcement will not follow a certain response. So if you give the child the attention, the child will do it. But if you don't give them the attention, the child will stop. There you go. Good. Any other questions about any of these? All of this is called operant conditioning. Operant conditioning. Okay, a way of learning under operant conditioning is called chaining. So here's the discriminative stimulus, meaning that the mom walks in and she has on her pretty dress. And that means that a response is most likely to occur. The child is going to say something because the mom is looking good today. So that's a discriminative stimulus, a positive response. A response is going to happen. So the child does respond by saying, "Mommy, you look pretty today." And then the mom responds back to the child. And then the child responds back to the mom. And then the mom responds back. That is called chaining. And with chaining, with each response, back and forth, the child is learning language and getting reinforced with each response. So the response is reinforcing each other. Each response will be a reinforcement. Then you have shaping. Here, shaping occurs when the child tries to do an approximation of a behavior. And here they give an example of a speech behavior. The child will say wa first for water, and then he says wa wa. And then he says wa da, and then he says wa ta, and then he says wa ter. So with the shaping, he gradually shapes his response to the correct one. And the conditioning comes in is that he is reinforcing himself by changing it and trying his best to get the adult approximation. So if you think about little children when they're learning speech and they're learning language, you know, many times the adults will give a reinforcement by answering back. And with the word water, what does the adult do? The child says wa. And the adult will say, you want some water? You want some water? And then the child will say, wow. Eventually the child listens to the adult and changes within himself. The reinforcement comes from within, that because he's trying to shape his vocal tract to say the same thing that the adult says. And so the next time the child will say, wah wah, well now the adult responds even better. Wah wah, oh yes, water. The child loves that response and then reshapes again to get even closer to the adult's production. And he will say wa-da, wa-ta, and then wa-ter. So the two ways that the children learn speech is through chaining and shaping. Pretty much, Colleen, yes. Pretty much, because they're all getting the response that you want. They're all getting some type of response back. And that's what the discriminative stimulus is. It is a stimulus in the presence of which a particular response will be enforced. It increases the probability of a response. So yes, very good. Y'all are woo-wee. All right, so according to the behaviorist, the child acquires language not through just constant reinforcement, but through selective reinforcement. So what becomes relevant for the child, salient, important for the child, because it's going to be variable based on the child's interests, likes, and his capacity to learn in the environment. So selective reinforcement, you must have, if you have no reinforcement, according to the behaviorist, you have no language. Now, the nativist will say that's not true, that, even if it takes a really bad environment for the child to have no language. So to the behaviorist, the way it is that at first a child may produce single words, and then it is the parents who encourages the child to say phrases. And then so the parent may withhold some reinforcement that makes it selected unless the child says the phrase, they'll say, now say cookie, more cookie, and then they'll withhold it for a few seconds. And then give the cookie to the child, or the parents are good about say please. They'll withhold the cookie just a little bit, and the child will say please, and then they get the cookie. So then the child produces the phrase and will receive reinforcement by getting the cookie. And some parents will say the whole thing, say I want cookie please. And that's how children learn language, through operant conditioning. And that makes sense, right? I do think operant conditioning definitely plays a part in the way children learn. It definitely plays a part in speech pathology. We use operant conditioning in all of our speech therapy sessions to teach children language. And so I definitely believe that operant conditioning is a major component of how parents teach language without even thinking about it. They're not even thinking that I am reinforcing my child when I'm smiling or when I'm hugging my child. All of that is just wonderful reinforcement. They don't know that they themselves are discriminate stimuli. Or, they don't know those terms, and they shouldn't. They're doing great without it. So here are some other terms for you to memorize. Echoic. Oh, let's see, what is this? No, I won't sum it up right yet because we're going to talk about the nativist next. So we'll sum that up later, Bradley. So echoic, that just means an imitation of a model in the presence of a nonverbal stimulus that represents the word. So you show them a cookie, and the child will, and you say cookie, and the child says cookie. So echoic, they imitate what you say in the presence of the object. So they're echoic. Now, there are some kids who are echoic, and they have no meaning. They will just repeat what you say. They don't even know what they're repeating. Then you have something called tact, T-A-C-T. When behaviorists say the word tact, they're talking about naming. So they will say, when we say naming, we'll say that the child was able to name, and they will say the child was used tact. Echoic becomes a tact. So they start repeating, and then eventually they're able to name on their own. And so a behaviorist will say tact, we'll say name. Manned, M-A-N-D, behaviorists use the word man, and this is a verbal behavior used to request or make a demand. And we will, we label that under pragmatics. Behaviorists say that children use intraverbal communication, and this is a verbal behavior that seems to have no direct connection. So the mom might say, Daddy went to work, and a child will say, go outside and play. Now, it looks like it has no direct connection, but it might. Now, why might this phrase really have meaning for the child and really be a connecting kind of phrase? I see Tally's writing. That's right, Tally. The child recognizes that, okay, Daddy's gone. My routine, we're going to go outside soon. It's part of our morning routine, yes. Yes, right. So, well, the child associates Daddy leaving, and then they go out and do an activity or do something in the day. So that's intraverbal, verbal inside. The child understands the scenario even if it looks disconnected to the outside observer. But these are some terms: echoic, tact, man, intraverbal. And I just want you to know those terms, memorize those terms, because you may also see them again in your language development class in graduate school, because psychologists play a big role in the analysis of language. And so we have borrowed some of their terms. Also, another term is autoclitic. Yes. Let's see. Hold on, let me see. Yeah, operant conditioning is behaviorist. Is behaviorist. Operant condition and behaviorist are the same thing. Let me go back to this slide. So B.F. Skinner is the biggest behaviorist, the most famous behaviorist that we know, and he is the person who came up with the term operant conditioning. And operant conditioning is what most therapists use. So we are talking about the behaviorist when we talk about B.F. Skinner. Okay? So autoclitic, here, all this means is that as children are learning sentences, so they learn the words and phrases from their parents. They learn the words from parents, imitating the parents, and phrases from parents. Now, sentences themselves, the way they start recreating new sentences is that each word in a sentence serves as a reinforcer for the next word. So it's kind of like they can predict. It's like a predicting of what is coming next. So I eat cookie I is a stimulus for eat, and eat is a stimulus for cookie. And that is how they learn to put these words together, because each word served as a stimulus for the next word, the probability that the next word will be accurate. So language learning is based on modeling from the parent, imitation from the child, practice from the child, and reinforcement from the parent. And that reinforcement eventually becomes self-reinforcement through using through using sentences. Okay, now, okay, as you can see, this is a theory. It doesn't mean that it's correct. So I want you to all know that any theory that anybody says, it doesn't mean that it is the only way to go. Theory will be a group of ideas that people have come together through some research, but at the same time, all research has weaknesses. So, operant conditioning, the behaviorist theory of how children learn language. The behaviorist theory of how children learn language, it becomes more difficult to prove because as language becomes more complex, it's hard to really appreciate this idea of autocritic reinforcement. It's hard to appreciate that children come up with creative responses. You know, it's kind of like, how did they figure that out? You know, did they just figure that out from modeling, imitation, practice, and reinforcement? It just, you know, it's just too many holes there. Too many holes. And then children produce words and sentences, and they've never had a model for them. So the behaviorist idea of language learning through operant conditioning just is not enough. Language is just too complex. Okay? So the other term is classical conditioning. Classical conditioning was first, and operant conditioning came out of classical conditioning. I'm only bringing this up, the classical conditioning, because it's in your book. Classical conditioning is the one that you know about the dog. You know, the dog will salivate just with the bell. He doesn't have to know that there is meat. He doesn't have to see the meat. He doesn't have to smell the meat. All he has to do is hear the bell. Once that bell rings, he starts to salivate, and then because he thinks he's going to get food. So yes, that is Pavlov, classical conditioning. So Pavlov was first, and out of this classical conditioning came Skinner, who talked about operant conditioning. But it is operant conditioning that we use in our therapy sessions. Okay? Oh, am I finished? Yes. Okay. So, there was a young man who is also a psychologist. He's a psycholinguist. His name was Chomsky. Noam Chomsky. He's written lots of books about grammar and the development of grammar and syntax. And as a psychologist, he studied Skinner, and I think under Skinner, with Skinner, conditioning, operant conditioning, behavioral theories about learning. And operant conditioning would be one of the behavioral theories of learning. Chomsky said no. So he was doing his PhD studying, and he says, you know, when he did his research, and he went into a parent's home, just similar to what you're doing, and he I'm sorry. Back then they had to write everything down. The speech of children recorder, that we had the audio recording of children. And he did several children, and he would follow parents, listen to parents, and he said, no, parents do not reinforce a lot. They're too busy doing housework. They're busy doing all of this. If they reinforce, they only reinforce maybe 30% of the time. And children are still learning language. So this can't be right. Skinner, this is not good. And they said not only that, they don't even correct grammatical errors of the young children. They don't do direct correction because the children kind of outgrow it, and they eventually they get it. And he says, well, so how are they learning standard English then? It can't just be through imitation that they're learning standard English. And he says after age 2, parents generally aren't doing a lot of repeating, and the kids aren't doing a lot of repeating after parents after age 2. So it can't be imitation. And Chomsky said that imitation is generally used for new words. And he says, have you ever heard adults speak? They have poor speech habits. We say, well, you know. Because that cannot possibly be the teachers. And children will produce words that parents never say. And imitation cannot account for all possible sentences. And also, behaviorists, they can only think about what comes out, remember? Because for them, it has to be something that is observed and that they can measure. So behaviorists can only talk about what comes out. And Chomsky says that is not enough. We need to talk about other skills, comprehension or cognitive skills. Not only Chomsky, but lots of other researchers. And these researchers were called nativists. Okay, this is your other PowerPoint, nativists. Nativists say that language is innate and that people are born with a species-specific capacity for language because animals can't do it like we can. So, and you don't need a lot of assistance from the environment because you have this innateness, Chomsky is a linguist, a psycholinguist, so he studied some psychology. He believes that language is universal and unique to humans. Chomsky is the big name under the nativists. There are lots of nativists. There are a lot of behaviorists, but I'm only going to tell you about the big names in each one, because there's just too many. Chomsky is the big name here. So Chomsky said, okay, speech is unique to humans. They tried to teach chimpanzees to speak, they failed. They tried to teach chimpanzees sign language, successful. But however, they lacked words. When they tried to do sign language in sentences, the chimpanzees, that was difficult. There was, I forgot, this is kanzi. I don't know if it's an orangutan or a chimpanzee. So it's a primate, not a human. They were successful at teaching sign language here and successful with teaching some syntax. So more sentences or phrases, but it was more childlike. They never reached the adult-like syntax. So right now, we don't have evidence. We can't say that other animals, other species, won't be able to use language like adults. We can only say there's no evidence that non-humans can acquire language that is comparable to adult human language. So according to the nativists, learning alone is not enough because it's just learned too quickly. So it has to be something natural and innate because we pick it up so quickly. And it is learned so early. And caregivers don't provide all the models. And they said that language is similar for all humans. Remember, nativists believe there are universals in language, and that there are more similarities in languages. I mean, they base their theories on similarities in all language. Behaviorists base their theory on differences in language because it's the environment, and every environment is different. All right. The nativists say languages have differences, yes, but they have these rules that you must follow in order to learn a language. They have, and the nativists, they're going to base their language on grammar, syntax. Okay, language, the way children learn language is through syntax. That's what they're hearing, syntax. Okay? So, the common features of all languages have subjects and predicates. All languages have some type of bedding of phrases, you know, embedding of phrases. Like the girl who is pretty walked to school. Who is pretty would be the embedded phrase. All languages have rules that change in tense, like future tense, past tense, change in plurality. All languages use a set of sounds from a common pool of sounds. So all languages that children at the beginning have sounds from all languages in the world, babbling. Some people don't believe this theory. Now these are theories. But when they get to a certain age, they get rid of some of those sounds and they only keep the sounds that are related to their language. So these uses a set of sounds that are related to their language. Okay. According to the nativists, children have something called a LAD, language acquisition device. Now, no one has proven this, that there is a language acquisition device. They have proven that there are parts of the brain that are activated whenever language occurs. But, you know, Chomsky calls it a LAD. All right, so Chomsky says that there is an innate structure in the brain called the LAD. It holds all language information. All right, all the language of the world, but takes information from the child's syntactic language that relates to the native language. So when you're born, you have this LAD. It has all the grammatical rules of the universe because the rules are universal. And then what the child does then will use only the rules that apply to his language. Children will use hypothesis-based testing, and they will say, okay, this is the rule, but does this rule relate to my language? Can I find an example? If I can't find an example, then I get rid of that rule. So they use hypothesis based on regularities found in the language. What does that mean, regularities? Well, the child hears this all the time. No, 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 no. So that's a regularity. They hear the N, they hear the O, they hear that combination of no, they hear the intonational pattern of no, okay? They begin to learn, okay, there's a consonant, there's a vowel, where those two go together, that means no. They begin to learn what are the regularities found in my language. They learn the order of the sounds, the order of the words, based on regularities found in my language. And that's how they learn syntax, the syntactic rules, by listening for regularities in the language. So we do have regularities. So we do, when we talk in sentences. We have a subject, we have a verb, we may have an object, we have a prepositional phrase. Prepositional phrase, there are rules for prepositional phrases. There are rules for verbs. So those are regularities. And those regularities are the rules that are within the LAD device. But in order to activate this lab, somebody has to talk to the child. So that's how the environment gets involved. But the environment isn't the most important thing. It is the lad. That's the nativist. But for the behaviorist says, oh no, you nativist, it is not the biology. It is the environment. So, they battle back and forth. They do battles in speech path too. When you get into some of the speech path courses on the graduate level, you have speech pathologists who they have these meetings, and you have a camp over here saying, yes, oral motor exercises, those are good. Then you have this camp on this side saying, no, that is crazy. Oral motor exercises don't help for speech production. Stop wasting the child's time by having him exercise his tongue. You don't need a strong tongue to produce speech. So you have all of these different viewpoints. So it's the same thing, but here you have two different fields. You have the linguist and you have the psychologist. But Chomsky, I believe, was a psycholinguist. So here are some of the nativist views. Structure is, such as grammar, is independent of semantics, meaning. So syntax is independent of meaning. Syntax is independent of phonology. Syntax is independent of pragmatics. So what the child hears, what the brain understands, is syntax first. Then they put the meaning to it. They have to have the syntax in order to give structure to the meaning, according to the nativists. And we have, there's so many theories, and they're going to all disagree. You're going to get tired of all these things about it because I can't remember all these theories. Okay. Now, thank goodness, there are only a limited number of rules for a given language. Yes, very good. Who is this? Colleen. Hold on. Oh, gosh. Oh, nature versus nurture. Oh. Okay. Oh, y'all have been making comments, and I have forgotten to look. Oh, is he stridently? Oh, Brad, they may not be strident. I'm being strident to make it more interesting so that y'all will pay attention to me. But they probably do, because there is a big debate about nature versus nurture. Yes. I think there should be some type of interaction, combination of the two. There is a midpoint. Okay, hold on. Oh, hold on, let me go on down. Who is this? Yes, Brad, they definitely do interact, and we will get to that at some point. But this is how it all started. So we're starting really early, like the 60s. So this is how, I don't ask people to remember years, but this is how it all started. It started with the behaviorists and the nativists. And then as we became more advanced, you have to start somewhere. See, you're advanced. This is 2017. A lot of people didn't understand anything about why people talked. So you have to start somewhere. Just think about the car, how the car started, and look at where we are now. Cars with telephones, cars that let you know that you're out of gas, but you had to start somewhere. So we're evolving. So don't be too hard on them, Bradley. They were really smart people and really led the frontier. So the way I'm presenting it, is sarcastic. So I'm probably leading you into being sarcastic yourself because of the way I'm presenting it. But I'm only being animated to keep myself awake. So Okay. Well, that's fine. And then people can branch off, you know. Okay, nativists. So the nativists, you know, believe in the LAD. The LAD has to do more with syntax than anything else. The children learn language through understanding syntax and grammar. Luckily, there are a set number of rules for each language, but once you get that set number of rules, you have endless possibilities of using those rules to create lots of sentences. But the rules, the set number of rules, describe the regularity of the language, that there must be a subject and a verb, that type of thing. So language acquisition, according to the nativists, is the discovery and application of rules to the native language. So what do the nativists say? Children learn language through the discovery and activation of the rules to the native language. And the behavioralists said that language is learned through, whoops, here it is, modeling, imitation, practice, and reinforcement. Nativists say that language is learned through the understanding of the regularities of rules of the native language. Now, they do have this in common. They both believe that children learn the native language. You know, that language will change based on their environment. So the nativists aren't saying that the environment isn't important. They're saying that it is not the most important thing, that biology is the driving force. Whereas the behaviorists, they're saying that the environment is the driving force. So you do have this nature versus nurture. And we'll find out that both groups have weaknesses. Yeah. All right. So Chomsky is the big name here, and Chomsky is the one you're going to learn about, because Chomsky felt like grammar was the way that children learn language. And because we're speech pathologists and syntax is one of the major components of language, you will know the name Chomsky. All right. So Chomsky says that there is a universal theory of universal grammatical rules of language, and that there are two levels. There is the phrase structure rules, which are universal, which say that subjects, all, sentences will have a subject. That's universal, no matter where you go, according to the Chomsky. And then there are transformational rules. The transformational rules are specific to your language. All right. So here are the universal rules, the phrase structure rules. The sentence is the main unit, is the basic unit. A sentence must contain a noun and a verb. Sentences can be written as noun phrase plus verb phrase. Noun phrase is subject, verb phrase is predicate. For those of you who remember your English, sentences can be rewritten with adjectives, articles, and prepositions. This is what makes it so creative. So even though you have a set number of rules, you can create many, many sentences because you have these adjectives and articles and prepositions and adverbs that you can add. Under this rule, sentences can be 2 words and longer. So, and I sum this up in a very basic way. I mean, there are other rules as well, but this gives you enough information for this class. So, phrase structure rules. I mean, Chomsky has written thick books. All right, so Chomsky attempted to develop a set of rules for which all languages generate an endless number of sentences. So to account for surface differences, transformations are used. So transformational rules change the basic phrase structure of the sentence. Hold on. Hope I have an example. Okay, not yet. I will give you an example. This will clear up. So deep structure, Chomsky says deep structure begins in the brain. So the deep structure will be generated by a phrase structure rule. The surface structure is the output. That's what comes out. That's what you see and hear. The transformational rules create the surface structure from the deep structure. Syntax will define the deep structure. The deep structure determines the semantic element, the meaning. We'll pick out the vocabulary words. And the surface structure, what it is that you say. The surface structure will determine the phonetic element, so that in order to say something, you have to put together the sounds. And the transformation rules will pull together the vocabulary, the semantics, and the phonology, which would be the sounds. All right, now let's see if I can make this clear. Hopefully, yeah. Oh, this doesn't make it clear. This one makes it clear, hopefully. Okay. Hold on, let me see if I got a better one. Deep structure. Hold on. Okay. All right. So you want to say Marco is going to the library. So in the deep structure, you're thinking to yourself, I want to say Marco is going to the library. In the deep structure, everything starts as a phrase, as a, what is it, a declarative. Okay, as a statement, that's the word I'm trying to say, as a statement. Because it's going to be noun phrase, verb phrase. So Marco is the noun phrase, is going to the library will be the verb phrase. So you're thinking, Marco is going to the library. But you want to ask a question. So to ask the question, Marco is going to the library, you have to find the transformational rule for question. So the transformational rule for question in English is to invert the subject and verb. So then you're going to say, this is the surface structure, you will say, is Marco going to the library? So you have the deep structure coming from the phrase structure rules, which would be this. This is the phrase structure rule. The deep structure, and then you have the transformational rule saying, okay, you want to ask a question, you have to make a transformation, and then you say the production. This is the surface structure, the output. Okay. Every sentence has a deep structure, which would include the semantics, and a surface structure, which would include the output, including semantics with phonology and also pragmatics. So, for example, the boy hit the ball, right? The ball was hit by the boy. Oh, typo. The boy hit the ball was hit by the boy. Is that saying the same thing? Do those two sentences have the same meaning? Yes, they do. They have the same meaning. But I didn't ask you about grammar. I asked you about meaning. Nobody said anything about grammar. I said meaning. Yes, the same meaning. Yes. The boy hit the ball was hit by the boy. So if you took a test and then they ask you, do these two sentences mean the same? You will have to say yes. Right. So this is the deep structure of both of these sentences. They have the same deep structure. So in the brain, the deep structure, the meaning of it is the same. But because of different transformational rules, different transformational rules. One, for Brad was talking about, you went into passive tense right here. And this is active tense. You have different transformational rules. You get different outputs. So it is the transformational rules that give you the creativity and the output, the different sentences that we can generate. So Chomsky had to come up with an idea of how it is that languages have such rich sentences if they all have a universal set of rules. And the way they have all these different sentences is because of transformational rules. So the deep structure sets the meaning in the brain, and from a set of universal rules, no matter the language, then the transformational rules of the language will then change the syntax of the deep structure. It will mean the same thing, change the syntax, so that the output or the surface structure can come out in different ways based on the transformational rules. Same deep structure, but different surface structure. So Chomsky was trying to make his model work. He called it the syntactic model. So do you understand the syntactic model? Please say yes. Every language has its own transformations, which take the universal rules of the deep structure and create their own unique surface structure. And that's how children learn language. They learn language from this universal rules, the LAD, this innate possibility. And if they're English speakers, they use the transformational rules in English to put out the English utterance. If they're Chinese, they have the same deep structure, universal rules as the English child, but they will use their native transformational rules to create their language. Okay. Okay, so here are some thoughts about the nativist views. Nativists believe nature is more important than nurture, that language is unique to humans. Here we're not sure that's true. That language acquisition. Oh, yes. The nativist views apply to speech-language pathology because we definitely believe that the brain is very important in terms of storing of language use. There is some belief that there is an innate potential for language. Now, no one calls it the LAD, and no one says that there are universal language rules that are stuck in the brain. Those kinds of beliefs are not accepted. But the fact that the innateness part is still accepted in terms of speech pathology today. Oh, well, the nativists didn't really give a technique as the behaviorists. The nativists really were just saying that language is learned through syntax. Oh, let me take that back. There are some people who work a lot on grammar, and they use Chomsky's views when they're teaching syntax to language-impaired children. But I don't do a lot of grammar, so I don't do. But not really very specific. But his explanation is more of of how children learn language more so than intervention techniques. All right, so here also the nativists say that language acquisition is complete by age 5. And we find that not to be true. So that we're, people are slowly knocking down the nativist view because there are some complex forms of language that are not mastered until adolescence. However, this innateness, many researchers are thinking that has strong possibilities because there are parents who do not provide good speech models for kids, so therefore it can't just be imitation. And also adults, we have a very different speech pattern than children, and we use a different speech pattern with young children. We talk to young children with simple grammar. We talk to young children with shorter, more expressive kinds of utterances. So, they're getting their grammar and language from something more than just listening to adults. So I think this innate part, the nativist view, is accepted. Oh, we'll go, because I'm talking too much, so I won't go through that. So then we have another person, Fillmore, psychologist. No, he's a linguist. And Fillmore actually was studying with my guy, Chomsky. And Fillmore says, yeah, I like the grammar. I do. I like the grammar. But it's just not right. It is not syntax. The child isn't looking at word order, noun and verb. It's not order. It's meaning. So he's telling the nativist, the syntactic model, he's a nativist too. Fillmore is a nativist as well. But he says it's not syntax. It is semantics that's important. So then you came up with the semantic cognitive view. And this view is under the interactionist model. With the interactionist model suggests that innateness and the environment are equally important for language development. So, Brad, you're just so far ahead of me. You're right. They both contribute something. I'm gonna have to, you're gonna have to let me build up my story, Brad. You tell everybody. What do you call it? A spoiler. Just look at it. All right, but I like it. I like maybe I could finish quicker if y'all ask me questions, because then I could just skip. Okay. What time is it? 8 o'clock. Gosh, I gotta let you take your quiz. Let's see. Your class ends at 9. The quiz is 30 minutes. So I will end at 8:20. All right. So you have the semantic cognitive view. Now you know that the semantics means meaning. Semantics, meaning. Cognitive means thought. Okay, problem solving, thought. When you do an IQ test, they're testing your cognition. That's part of it, IQ test. So that's the way I'm making it simple. So semantic cognitive view. So language is learned through the expression of meaning and through the syntactic relationships among words. So Fillmore is saying to Chomsky, I like the syntax thing. I like it a whole lot better than behavior, So, but, however, you're missing something. You're missing the idea of meaning. That language is learned through the expression of meaning and through syntactic relationships. So syntax, word order, is still important. So Fillmore came up with his own thing. He calls it case grammar theory. So he argued that semantic concepts, not syntactic concepts, determine how noun and verbs relate to each other. He threw in this. These semantic concepts are not necessarily innate, like the syntactic concepts, because the semantic concepts are learned through interacting with the environment. Meaning is learned through interacting with the environment. So Fillmore came up with his own, some vocabulary words. Let me see if I want you to learn this. Okay. I want you to, you can skip these. I feel like you're just getting bogged down with so many vocabulary words. Go to this one right here. Case. Remember? Go back. The name of his theory is case grammar. So, case is a specific semantic role. Okay? So a case is a specific semantic role. Now let's see what that means. There are 7 universal cases. So, agentive. So this is an agent. That is a role. That's a semantic role. So a word is not just a word, it's what he's trying to say to Chomsky. A noun is not just a noun. A noun, a word is a meaning. It's a meaningful entity. It's not just a noun. And children they don't really get language through saying that something is a noun or thinking noun. They're thinking meaning. So an agent, a dative, an experiencer, a factive, an instrumental, a locative, an objective, and I'll give you those examples on this page here. An agentive, I say agent, I hate the word agentive. Anyway, agent is a person actually doing something. Tom hid the gift. So Tom is an agent because he actually did it. Tom is more than a noun. Do you understand the differences here? It's all in the semantics. You know, people say that it's all in the semantics. And that's what and that's what Fillmore is saying. It's in the semantics, Chomsky. It's not in the syntax. Syntax is important. Word order is important, but really the way they learn is through meaning. Dative. Sally gave. It should be gives. I'm sorry. Sally gave him a gift. So here, him would be your, indirect object, but it's a dative. And I have to look up and see what dative means, but, oh, there it is. It's on this page. Dative is a person affected by an action. Experiencer. So here, Jerry isn't doing anything, so he's not an agent, but he's experiencing an emotion. So he's an experiencer. So the child learns about language through labeling roles, giving roles to words, giving meaning to words, not just the word order. Okay? Let's see. Factative is an instrument, let me see, an object that is the product of an action. So if you draw something or like that, then you call it a factative. There are different words. People have redone Fillmore. Instrumental use of an object. Locative as a place, location, place. Objective would be like the direct object. So you can see, oh, well, okay, let's see, hold on. Factative, you create something. It's a product that you created. An object is described by the verb. So in this factative, the built isn't necessarily described by the noun. It's what happened to the noun. Object, well, I don't know. Object, here, I always just go direct object is the objective. The factative is usually a noun that has been created by something. Like if you say the person drew a girl, then girl is not an object. Girl is a factative. The woman cooked a roast for dinner. According to Fillmore, it would be a factative. So, but however, this word factative is going away because people didn't like it, probably because they were confused, like, you know, like myself and you, Susan, about the differences. But Fillmore was started the beginning of semantics, this idea behind semantics. He started the beginning, and people are going to take his cases and they're going to improve on them. And they won't be called agentive, it will be called agent. They keep experiencer, they keep instrumental and locative and object, but they don't keep some of the others. So then there was a battle between semantics and syntax. Chomsky and Fillmore both believe that language production is generative. That just means you can create many, many sentences. However, Chomsky believed that language is generated through syntax, while Fillmore believed that language is generated through semantics. Even though the semantics still has a syntactic feel to it. Let me see if I can show you that. I don't know if I have an example. I don't, not yet. But you will get the idea soon, and as you do your language samples, you'll start to see it when we go through the analysis. Then Bloom came around. Bloom is a woman, and Bloom was a student of Fillmore's student. And Bloom says, yes, semantics. Semantics is the key for understanding how children learn language. And we use Bloom's semantic categories even today. So we do use Bloom's information, Brad, in speech pathology. However, she discovered that semantic information was needed to do an adequate job of explaining syntax. Bloom may have been a student of Chomsky's. I can't remember. I used to know their history. But she branched away too. The syntactic rules could not explain the meaning of the utterance. For example, mommy sock. Now you look at this. You look at the syntax of this. You see a noun and you see a noun. According to Chomsky, this mommy would be noun phrase and sock would be verb phrase with the verb missing, okay? However, Bloom and even Fillmore said no, mommy sock would have different meanings in different contexts. So tell me, class, what different meanings could mommy sock have? Punch, what does that mean? This is a sock. This sock belongs to mommy. Where is the sock? Oh my God, I want my sock. Oh my, look at this. So what Bloom is saying, we're not giving the child enough credit here. It's not just about a noun phrase and a verb phrase. It's not about just syntactic order. It's about context. It's about meaning. That's how the child learns to speak, through meaning. And this is how we teach young children, as a matter of fact, using Bloom's theories. Very good. I mean, you came up with more different ways to produce mommy sock. What mommy sock may mean than I could have. So, all right, let's see here. I'm almost done. So, Bloom, that word order is marked by semantic relationships. Now, let's go back to Chomsky. Chomsky says syntax or word order is first. Fillmore says syntax is important, but we really have to think about the semantics, and we have to do case grammar. So Fillmore still kept the word grammar in his, case grammar. Bloom came in and said semantics is the semantic relationships. A child develops semantic relationships first, and then that helps them achieve word order. Okay? Semantic relations develop before syntax. That's the whole idea. Okay. I want to show you something. Let's see, do I have it in here? No. Dog it, I don't have it. I thought I had a chart in here. Oh, I must have it later on. Okay. Excuse me. I was trying to think. Bloom developed some semantic relationships. I'm going to give you one just so I can make it clear to you. For example, Bloom will say, oh my goodness, what happened to Alma? Hello? All my chats went away. Oh. Can you hear me? We can hear you. I can't see anything that you're writing. Oh my gosh. I don't know what has happened. I'm going to write, see if it comes up. Can you see that I wrote anything? Oh, I got it. Okay, I'm sorry. I see what happened. Okay, I'm going to write this these semantic relationships that Bloom developed. And I want you to give me an example of a phrase that a child may say that would be agent action. Okay? Can you give me an example? Ah! Thank you, Susan. That's right. Here's another one. And so for Fillmore, his would be agentive. Let's see, eat. I don't even see a verb. His is all objects. Right here are nouns. It looks like his is primarily nouns for Fillmore. And the way Bloom took it a little further by adding verbs and adjectives. Uh, Susan, let me see. Me potty. Are you using potty as a verb there? Okay. Then no, it won't fit because actions can only be verbs. Okay. Another semantic relation for Bloom would be mommy gone. The word gone, mommy go for sure. Mommy gone. The past tense makes that a little bit tricky in terms of the analysis. Let's see, action, I'm trying to think of another one. Me play, yes. Agent action. And Yasmin, the mommy gone, no, daddy call, but not daddy phone, if phone is a noun. There is one for mommy gone, but right now I can't think of what it is. No, Brad, that would not be agent action. Action object, because is not an action verb. Action object. You'll learn that too. There are a lot of little nuances. But I think you'll get the idea behind semantics if you do this exercise. Because if I'm just talking, it's like I'm just talking words. Can you give me an example of action object? Here an object has to be affected by the action. And the action must be an active verb. It can't be an is verb, a to be verb. It can't be a verb like shall or will. Anyone? Action object. Very good. That's a little easier. Okay. All right. So let me go on. So I can. Oh, it's 8:24. All right. So I'm going to stop here at semantics. Let you sort of soak that in. There you go. Yep. Well, yes, okay, that's good. I think that's good. Brad, I'm getting too technical. All right, I have to change the time of your quiz. So very good, class. I think you may be, don't tell some of my graduate students, you may be one of the best prereq classes I have had. In terms of your interactions and your questions, I love it. I feel like I have to up my game with you. So I'm going to have to move a little faster, too, so we can make sure we finish. So you have a quiz coming up. I'm getting ready to go in and change the time, so you should be able to take your quiz at 8:30. You will have 30 minutes. For some of you, it shouldn't take you any longer than 15 minutes to do. No, I'm not flattering. I don't flatter. Oh, gosh, I'm on recording. Let me record. Get that.